Hi everyone, my name is Istafa. I'm an educator at the Rare Charitable Research Reserve, and today I'm joined by Jason. Jason, can you tell me a little bit about your work? Where do you work? What do you do?
All right, so my name is Jason Sickel, and I'm a prescribed burn boss and prescribed burn consultant with a land management company known as Lands and Forest Consulting. And I've been with the company now since 2008. I did a little bit of work previous with them, a couple of years here and there prior to that. And before that, I spent 10 years with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, working my way up through the wildland firefighter ranks, from wildland firefighting crew member to an initial attack incident commander type 3.
That sounds really cool. How many hours do you work in a typical week?
This is a really unique job, the prescribed burn aspect of my life. It's you can't calculate it in hours per week. It's over the calendar year, and there's a lot of part of that calendar year where you have nothing to do associated with prescribed burning. So the planning portion of the whole process happens in the late summer, early fall, when clients get a hold of us and express their interest in conducting a prescribed burn for many different goals and objectives and reasons. And I meet up with those clients and we sort out those ideas and interests and come up with goals and objectives specific to that site. And that all happens in the fall. So, 6 months, sometimes a year prior to the actual burn. And that goes into a burn plan. So all the details specific to that site to meet those objectives and goals. And then the winter comes and everything's in dormancy, and we're waiting for emergence, spring emergence. So a lot of the burns happen in the spring because burning conditions are optimal. Everything is dormant. The days are getting longer, the weather's getting nicer, more favorable, a little more stable as you kind of get into spring. And you can time the spring emergence of those invasive species that you want to talk about shortly, so we can set them back. And that's when our busy time is. Like the spring is really busy because there's about 3 weeks there where it's just very hectic. And I'm probably putting in 18 hours a day, just forecasting, tracking weather, forecasting weather, and matching the weather data with each specific site and the requirements that each site needs to achieve the type of fire that we want. So we have to match the weather and the moisture contents with the site and the objectives. So it's being really tuned in to what's going on weather-wise and the site conditions themselves. And then after that, kind of just merge into summer, and that's vacation time.
Yes, that's awesome. I'm glad you do get some time off at least. So you definitely don't have a typical work day. It seems like every day is kind of dependent on the season and kind of what you have to do at that time of the year, right?
That's right. Yeah. We're very proud on how we match the specific conditions and the requirements of each and every burn site we have with each and every client with optimal weather conditions. And that's the prescription. So we're prescribing a fire for that site, and we do our best to match that prescription when we pick a burn day. And the most frequent question is, when are we going to burn? When can we schedule our burn for the spring? And there's no answer. I can't schedule a burn for the spring. I can give you my best idea a week out, if it's going to happen next week or maybe the week after, but the weather's so unpredictable in the spring. And there's so many influencers in the way fire behaves. When you break down it into fire science, there's temperature and relative humidity and moisture and wind, right? And percent solar radiation and how much cloud cover there is for the day. So the best that we can do is really just pick 1 or 2 days in advance of when I can give you that surety that we're going to be there and do that burn for that particular site. But that's what makes it fun, all the thinking, right?
Yeah, definitely sounds like it's kind of up to chance a little bit, but also a lot of skill involved. So speaking of, what kind of skills do you use on a day-to-day basis in your role? Or what are required skills in your role?
Well, in my role, I am the prescribed burn boss. So I orchestrate everything that happens with the fire. So it's my job to fully prepare myself with fire science, fire behavior science for wildland firefighting and controlling wildland fires. Okay, so if we don't do this in a proper manner, it becomes an uncontrolled fire, right? If we don't take the precautionary measures going into this event, then it becomes an uncontrolled fire. So it's my job, it's my responsibility to produce a fire that's going to meet objectives, that's going to be conducted safely and in a timely manner, so we can get on to the next fire as well, or the next burn. I like to say burns because these aren't fires; these are controlled and calculated burns. So I'm really tuned into the fire science things. So and that came from my background in fighting wildland fires. And I was first employed by the Owen Sound District, and part of our job description was to travel around Southern Ontario and conduct prescribed burns for the Ministry of Natural Resources. So there's no better way to understand anything than observing what's going on, right? And taking in those observations and understanding those observations. So I got to sit and watch as a crew member, just with a water pack on my back, making sure that my portion of the line didn't cross over, but I got to watch fire behavior for over 300, 400 prescribed burns. So I took that and I took a college course called Wildland Fire Science. And then and I just applied that through the additional training that I received from the Ministry of Natural Resources. I just kept building on the fire science as I built on my command rank as I moved up the command ladder within the Ministry of Natural Resources. And I took all that knowledge when I left the ministry and I got hired onto the City of Barrie Fire Department. I continued with that knowledge with Lands and Forest Consulting with the prescribed burning. So I always build on that. I continuously build on that. I'm continuously reading educational pieces, case studies, reports, burning experience happening in similar conditions that happen through the northern states and stuff like that. So it's my job to keep on top of the most recent fire science, just so I can keep all my burn team safe, right?
Yeah. So you've talked a lot about fire science, and you quite obviously have a lot of lived experience with fire science and your education background as well. I'm wondering, if somebody would like to be in the same position as you, what sort of educational background should they go through to get to where you're at?
I think there's no better education than experience. So if they want to get into something like that or like this, it's a select and unique career option, and really you're gonna have to supplement it with some other kind of career because it's so seasonal, right? But get a job with the Ministry of Natural Resources on a wildland fire crew. You know what, that was probably the best years of my life for somebody that's outdoorsy and loves that sort of stuff. So and it's just the information and the means of survival and the troubleshooting knowledge and experiences that you gain, it's just priceless. So it's a great way to break into that realm of things. Other than that, there's RX 100 courses out there that you can take, low complexity prescribed burn courses, and you can become a low complexity prescribed burn worker, and you can volunteer your services for some burn companies that are working alongside us and out there. And that's really the only two routes that you can go to be a prescribed burn worker.
Just to follow up with that, who offers the RX 100 courses that you were speaking about?
You can gain all that information from going on the Ministry of Natural Resources website.
Okay. Awesome. So what part of your job do you find the most enjoyable?
For my role, I like manipulating fire to do what I want it to do to meet the objectives. So I could have the exact same site conditions and burn the same day, but I could have a different fire in the morning versus the afternoon versus the evening, just on the way I'm tracking and calculating the variables in the weather. So for me, it's really interesting because I'll burn a site 3, 4, half a dozen, couple dozen times in my mind from the time I first see that site on paper to I visit it in person doing a site assessment consult meeting, and then I just formulating the burn plan. I'm processing all that information again, and I'm creating a fire in my mind that's going to meet those objectives and be safe, taking into account where the boundaries are placed and topography and the fuel loads on site. And then when it comes burn day, ignition happens and the fire does exactly what it's expected to do. I find that very rewarding. So it's a reward to the time I put into gaining that knowledge, and it's a reward to my crew, my burn team, because they're safe and they appreciate what's going on too, because they love fire, so they're happy to be there.
Yeah.
But I think at that stage where I am now, it's definitely just seeing things come to fruition, what I've been planning for so long, right?
Yeah, that's definitely rewarding. What would you say is the most challenging aspect of your job then?
Well, the weather. So I'm trying to I wouldn't say guess, but I would say educationally guess the weather professionals, right? So
Yeah.
I'm this spring I was picking burn days where it said it was going to rain, so I'm picking windows in between rain events, but during those windows there's enough time for drying to occur. So the calculations are being made from when that last drop of rain falls on that site to when the sun comes out to how many minutes I need to wait for those fuels to become burnable. And then we're sitting there and we're waiting for that, right? And if we didn't take into that count and we just wrote that day off because it was a rain day, then we would have missed half our burns this year. So there's been seasons where it's been 100% sunshine forecasted for the next 4 days, and I'll say to a client, great, we need 3 days to dry. On that Thursday we're going to burn your site. And then each and every morning I'll wake up and I'll check the weather, and it'll still say sun, and I'll say we're still a go for Thursday, right? And Wednesday morning it'll be still a go. Thursday comes around, 100% chance of rain, and it's raining. Where did it come from? I don't know, but that's probably the most frustrating thing for me.
Yeah, I can imagine weather is such a hard thing to predict. Would you say there's lots of job prospects in this field? Are there too many people entering or too few right now?
No, like I said, it takes a tremendous amount of understanding and experience to pull off a prescribed burn. Like, you have to have a considerable amount of respect and knowledge regarding this type of it's very dynamic and very fluid, and unless you spend many years observing it and understanding it, you're not going to be able to successfully conduct a prescribed burn. There's just too much at stake, right? Because we're burning down in the inner cities, right down High Park, Toronto, Oakville, Mississauga, Hamilton, right? So there's a couple companies out there that conduct prescribed burns on the private part of business. And then there's conservations that have their own qualifications through the RX 100 courses. So there's some conservations conduct their own burning, some Parks Canada conducts their own burning, and that's such. But no, it's not a market that's flooded with students waiting for a job, right? I'd say probably it's probably sitting just right with the amount of resources out there, with the amount of requirements to burn. So.
Awesome. Could you talk a little bit about how your profession relates to climate change mitigation or climate action?
I think climate change will come in and have an effect on what you're seeing is the larger wildfires that are happening, you know, midsummer, late summer, early fall, down through those coastal zones and stuff like that, right? Because then it's just hotter summers are drying out all those fuel layers and those coarser fuels and those larger fuels, and you're getting much larger fires than we've ever seen before, and they're pushing upwards through the hemisphere, right?
So that's really cool to think about. Is there any advice that you'd give to high school students that are interested in a career in either prescribed burns or firefighting or just sustainability in general?
So when I was in high school, I discovered this world through career day, right? And then it was my goal to go to college and work outside. I didn't care what I got into, but I enjoyed the outdoors. I enjoyed nature, so I wanted to do something that got me out in those things. So my first piece of advice would be follow your interests, right? If you enjoy what you're doing, it's not going to be work, right? And there's so many opportunities out there right now that if you are not enjoying yourself, you know, respectfully decline the position you're in. That gives your employers chance to fill your spot. And then go seek something that you enjoy, right? Try something new. Like, everybody's hiring right now. So, like I said, for wildland firefighting experience, get on that MNRF website and check out how to become a wildland firefighter. If you want to be a prescribed burn, low complexity worker, Google, right? Find out who's offering the courses, who's picking up volunteers. And for structural firefighting, you know, it's there's many different outlets right now to become a structural firefighter. And I'm old. I've been in the structural firefighting business for so long, I don't care how to get hired anymore. But I think there's a program called FESTI, and there's Texas A&M, and there's Seneca College, and there's Georgian College, and you can go volunteer in your own township as a volunteer firefighter and go through that recruitment stage and get your, you know, your level 1 and your firefighter 1 and your firefighter 2. You get your ProBat board and your IFSAC certificates, and so there's lots and lots of options out there. But that market, the structural firefighting market, is one that's flooded with students. Lots of people trying to apply and get a job, and the average age is, you know, 25 to 30 years old, because they're looking for experience. So I'd say don't put all your eggs in one basket trying to become a firefighter. Get your certifications, get your qualifications, build on those, build on your experience, get your volunteer time in with different charities and organizations and Red Cross and St. John's Ambulance, right? And in the meantime, pursue your other interests as well. right? Something that's gonna put some money in your pocket for those years between you're 17 and 25, right?
Well, thanks so much, Jason. That is wonderful to hear all the experience that you have that you were able to share with us today. One last question for you. Would it be okay if there were high school students that had any other additional questions that they couldn't get from this interview or from Google, if they could reach out to you if they had anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I'd be more than happy.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.